We got 3 more talks to go, and next up, I'm excited for this actual talk. We're going to talk about how and if you should build your own rollups. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world of rollups. It's getting easier and easier to launch your own rollup chain, but there's a lot of nuances to that question. And talking about that will be Hilmar from Gelato, telling you all about whether you should build rollups. So please give Hilmar a big round of applause.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. How's everyone doing? Awesome. So maybe before we begin with the presentation, maybe if you can raise your hand if you know what a rollup or a layer 2 is. Okay, most of you. Who has heard about the FUD that is going on Twitter about new L2s? Sorry? No, basically, why should you launch another L2? What's the reason? Is it actually great for Ethereum or not? Right. So a bunch of you. Maybe just briefly, who's heard about Gelato before? Okay, cool. Nice. Then let's jump right in. The talk is, should you build your own layer 2? And the motivation for this talk is actually there has been a lot of discussions online on Twitter recently about new layer 2s launching and people criticizing them of, hey, should you actually do it, and who should actually do it, and how much does it actually cost, and what are actually the benefits of doing it, and is it just all narratives and stories that people tell you to dump a token on you? And I want to shine some more light on the reality of actually doing this and launching L2, and if you should actually do it as a developer yourself. And I guess there are a lot of developers in the audience today. By the way, I'm Hilmar, I'm one of the founders of Gelato. And this is roughly the agenda. Before we jump into it, I want to talk quickly about what we do at Gelato to give you some context why I give this presentation. Gelato is a rollup as a service platform, and we help projects launch their own rollups. So, of course, I'm a bit biased because I help projects launch their new L2s and their new rollups, right? But roughly how you can think about it is that you can come to Gelato, you can go to our UI, and literally in a click, you can launch your own layer 2 on Ethereum, on Base, with the OP stack, with the Arbitrum Orbit stack, with any cool stack that you like. And the cool thing about it really is that you don't only get like the rollup, and then you're kind of like lost, and you can't really build applications that require maybe paymasters, bundlers, some automation, some verifiable randomness or whatnot. You get all of these bundled in, serviced by us, our first-party native modules that we have. And then we also have a marketplace of all the good bridges, wallets, block explorers, everything you really need that we provide to you in a single click. So you have literally the same environment that you're used to on like Base or Ethereum on your own rollup, and you can build scalable applications. But of course the question is, should you actually do it in the first place? These are some of the examples of chains that are live on Gelato. Yeah, you are seeing right, there's Fox in there. So Fox News has a chain on Gelato. There's one of the enterprises that are working together with us. There are a bunch of others, Lisk, Rhea, Everclear, LF0, so you name them. So if you want to launch a rollup, you're not alone. And this is, by the way, how it looks like. You can literally just go to the UI, click your stack, click your DA layer, click your native gas token you want to have, click the services you want, click deploy, and then you have your own rollup. So it's pretty simple. Let's quickly talk about the state of layer 2s. Is it a hype? What's actually happening? So what we have seen in the last couple of months, especially since the beginning of the year, is that there is an explosion of new layer 2s being deployed. And you can see this big uptake since 2023, and there are probably even more now since we are going into that Q3 just ended and we are going to the end of 2024. And I think what is always interesting to look at is who are actually applications that are deploying their own layer 2s, right? We hear a lot about the general purpose layer 2s building their own ecosystems. We hear a lot about perp decks and so on, but I think what people don't talk about a lot are all the games that are launching. And I think especially for games, layer 2s is a great use case, because what games really want is games want high throughput. Games might not care about having the exact security properties and decentralization properties of Ethereum, right? They just want to have a really scalable virtual machine that provides them with verifiable computation that all of their customers can follow along if they like. And so actually what we are seeing is the biggest sector of rollups is actually games, which I think is super interesting. And I think we are now seeing the first couple of games launching that actually have real users and not just like play to earn type of incentivized playing. And yeah, if we look at all these icons of projects that you probably know, we see that a lot of the alternative layer ones that have been launched in the previous cycle, they are now pivoting to layer twos like Lisk, Asta, Live0, applications, big applications such as Uniswap, WorldCoin, Frax, Raya, they're all going to their own chains. Enterprises, Coinbase has Base, Fox, and actually some new ones that we're excited to announce like in a week or so that will also launch with us. And then of course the games, you know, like a proof of play, like League of Kingdoms, they're all deploying their own chains. So a lot of things happening in the layer 2 space. But does it actually make sense to launch your own layer 2? And these are just like screenshots that I made yesterday, and there's some FUD going on Twitter where someone is claiming that it costs you $14 million per year to launch your own L2, and should you actually do it? Which I think I want to try to argue against today. And yeah, and people are making fun of launching L2s. And I think this sort of like framing is a bit flawed, but let's try to go through the argumentation here together and see if it actually makes sense for you or anyone else to launch an L2. And so let's start with the drawbacks, right? Why shouldn't you launch an L2? Like, why is that maybe not the right thing for you as an application developer, as an ecosystem developer, right? So first of all, the costs. We saw $40 million. It costs $40 million to launch an L2. Well, that's bullshit. It doesn't cost $40 million to launch an L2. We launched literally a bunch of L2s with a lot of top projects. And if you really need all the infrastructure that most of the application developers require, which are like the chains, the RPCs, the block explorers, maybe if you do DeFi, you need some oracles to get off-chain data in. You need maybe like account abstraction or relay services to abstract gas and have a greater UX, right? You want maybe multi-sig support in order to manage upgradability of smart contracts. You might need external bridging, which is not with the canonical bridge. You might need indexing for displaying data, smart contract automation services. These are sort of some rough numbers, but around about you get to like 18.5K, let's call it 20K per month, right? Which is definitely not $40 million, right? It's not cheap. It's not, if you're just starting out and you haven't raised a round as a project, you probably don't want to pay this, right? But if you actually have users and if you actually have some money and you actually need scalability, then it might actually be worth it. And my prediction is what I'm seeing in the market, costs are coming down significantly. So I expect like latest in a year from now, this will be $10,000. And 2 years from now, this will be $5,000. And at some point, it is literally just everyone can afford to deploy their own L2. But I'm getting ahead of myself. What are some other drawbacks that exist for launching your own L2 that you should be considering? So you have these fixed costs that you have to pay infrastructure providers, Gelato, and other people, right? But they're also variable costs because launching your own chain means that you have to pay for security for your chain. And that usually means that you have to pay a data availability provider and potentially another chain where you want to settle to. And these transaction costs, first and foremost, have to come from you. You have to fund like a sequencer account or like another account that then pays for the gas of these networks. This could be Ethereum. If you have an Ethereum rollup, this can be Celestia, if you use Celestia or whatnot, right? The good thing about this is that you don't have to like finance all of this out of your own pocket. You can charge your users, right? Because there are these things that we all are aware of, which are gas fees, right? And we pay a lot of them on Ethereum, slightly less on Base or Arbitrum or whatnot. And these actually go into your own pocket if you have your own chain. So usually how projects should be configuring the chain is that if users actually use it and they have to pay for gas, that you should do it in such a way where it's actually at least break even, so you cover your variable costs. By the way, the interesting use case here, and this I think we just have to normalize. I think we're just used to chains never dying, especially L1s just keep on running and running. But I think we have to normalize chains dying. I think it's okay for chains and layer 2s to die if no one uses them and if it's too costly to operate them. And I think this just has to become the norm. And there has been an example of a chain that sort of didn't make it or actually ran out of money, which is the Public Goods Network. It was actually one of the first OP stack chains back in the day. I know the team, great bunch of people, but they actually got wrecked by the variable cost that they had to pay to Ethereum back in the day because they paid tens of thousands of dollars per month in data availability and settlement cost to Ethereum, because I think it was even before blobs got shipped, so they had to just like post the transactions to Ethereum. It was still in a very sort of high gas environment, and so they literally got broke by just posting empty blocks. Like no one used them, and so they posted empty blocks to Ethereum, and then they ran out of money. Bad timing, I guess. The solution would have been to actually have some users before you launch a chain, right, that then actually help you pay for it and potentially use a more cost-effective data availability layer, which to their, to be fair to them, wasn't available at the point. So they just had bad market timing. So you have to cover the variable cost. You will lack atomic composability with other applications, right? So if you are building an application that is, for example, relying on being composable with a Uniswap or with a lending market because you're building like a structured product on top of Aave that shorts Aave and goes long somewhere else, right? And you want that all to be atomically composable, then of course you should probably build on a chain where you have all of these things together on the single chain, right? You can probably build the same use case in an asynchronous composable way, but usually applications are not built in that way today. So this is definitely a trade-off that you have to be fine with. You're trading off composability. You're also requiring your users to bridge into your chain themselves, right? And I think we're all still used to these old bridge UIs where you have to like, oh, how do I get from this chain to that chain? I think that's a problem today. I think in the future, there are these buzzwords like chain abstraction stuff. I think it will be much easier. I think there will be tools that help find your chain for customers without them having to go through UIs and go to the list of the millions of chains to select yours. Then, of course, we just had a call by our friends from Circle. Circle, unfortunately, doesn't support native USDC for all these new chains that are being deployed because it's very difficult to do so, and it requires a bunch of work. I try to push them to always do it. Hey, please do it for all of our chains. They say, no, we can't. Hopefully, eventually, they can. But, of course, Binance right now doesn't accept deposits and withdrawals from all these new chains that are deploying. So you have to hop over like Base or hop over Arbitrum if you want to do it. And I think most importantly, or like one of the biggest reasons I hear when I talk to projects, a lot of them get grants from layer ones. And they're like, hey, do I get a grant for building my layer two? No, then I probably want to build on the layer one, right? But as a fun fact, there are actually also grants from layer twos, like framework developers, so you're not alone. But let's go to the benefits. They are much more fun. Anyways, and I'm more bullish chain, so I like to focus on the benefits here. And first of all, it's actually a way to generate revenue. And why? Because all this revenue that there is a lot of, if you have an application with actual users, then there's a lot of untapped revenue that you are foregoing to the network that you are deploying on, which might be Ethereum or which might be Base, for example. And this, especially let's say if you deploy on Base or any other layer 2, then what you are basically doing is you are using a reseller of data availability services. So Base is paying data availability on your behalf, and you are paying Base, which is then paying Ethereum, and they are taking a cut, right? And that cut is their margin. And if you look on the Coinbase annual report, I don't know how much it was, 4 or 5% of the entire annual revenue came from Base sequencing that you guys are paying as users, right? So that's a good business model. Obviously, you need as many users as Base, right? So you can internalize this. There's this chart of actually Rollup that is on Gelato, and you see the curve. They're making like 25K a month in profits for sequencing fees. That's nice. Why not? You can do the same with MEV, Unichain. That's the whole point of like Uniswap launching on MEV. $800 million got leaked in MEV since the update to POS of Ethereum. This can be internalized, and like most of that was probably Uniswap, arbitrage, toxic flow, etc. Uniswap can internalize this and give it back to their LPs. That's a pretty big number. So that's a good reason. I want to speed up a bit. So block building is another thing. Like it's not only about internalizing MEV, but you can do all sorts of stuff if you control the sequencing of your chain. You can say, every time on the top of the block, I want to update Oracle prices for my perp DEX in order to minimize MEV. I want to run all the transactions that get processed on my chain through some sort of KYC or analytics service. You can do all sorts of things that you can't do by outsourcing sequencing and block building to external parties. So it just gives you much more control. You can do AS, which is application-specific sequencing, which gives you a lot of powers. You can customize your rollup for like maximum security or minimize cost. Like the games can say, I don't need Ethereum security, I just need scale, and they can really sort of optimize their own chain for this. And you can customize the bridging, configurations, the security. You can do upgrades. Like right now, if you deploy on a chain, you are beholden to what their, I don't know, token holders or whatever decide of how they're gonna upgrade their chain, right? You have no control over it. And I always think like, if you're a big enterprise and you wanna launch a chain, do you wanna be beholden to some, I don't know, network of people that are making decisions on your behalf, what these upgrades will be? Potentially, I don't know, but sometimes probably not. And so having your own chain just gives you much more control over all of this. And most importantly, I think for projects that I talk to that need scale is like they avoid the noisy neighbor problem. You're not sharing your chain. And I see chains or L2s as like verifiable servers. And you're not sharing, if you need to scale, you're not sharing your server with someone else. Like with some other application that has nothing to do with it. You need your own dedicated environment where you can actually scale into. And so having your own chain just gives you that scale. And eventually this is something we're working on. We actually want to enable horizontally, elastically scalable chains. So if you are deploying application, you shouldn't deploy on one chain. You shouldn't deploy on a shared chain. You shouldn't deploy just on one chain. You should deploy on a system that can elastically scale the environment for you as your usage grows. And so you might have 4 different chains at some point, just for your application. So to summarize, this is a very simplified model, right? If you expect to have a lot of users, if you expect to have some MEV, I think it makes a ton of sense to have your own chain. If you have no users right now and you don't expect to have users, you're just starting out, you don't have product market fit, you're just testing, don't deploy a chain. Go to one of the existing, it's like a co-working space, right? Go to like a co-working space. If you are pre-seed and your co-working space is like Arbitrum, you can go there, Arbitrum 1, you can mingle a bit, you don't pay a lot, but you share the toilets and everything with some other people. If you want to have your dedicated restroom, then do your own chain. And of course, it's still a bit expensive, right? So I showed you the numbers, it doesn't come for free, so you need to have a bit of money to pay for this. Yeah, so how does the future of all of this look like from our perspective, talking to a bunch of customers and stuff? And I'm not saying this will be the future, right? But I think there's a high likelihood that maybe Web3 will actually look a bit more like what we're used to in Web 2. And so, first of all, I believe there will be millions of rollups. I think everyone will have their own chain eventually. I think you come to platforms, you deploy your chain, and it doesn't cost you anything. It costs you as much as deploying like your own server on like a Vercel platform or something today. I think everyone in the industry is working towards making this happen. I think it will be, from a UX point of view, that you actually don't deploy the chain. You're just saying, hey, I want to deploy this app. Here's my GitHub, import code base, click, deploy, like on Vercel. And in the background, it spins up a chain for you. But then as more traction comes to your application, it spins up smart chains, and it sort of shards the state between them and reconsolidates it if usage goes down and up again. So it's a much more elastic system. But you don't even see it. You don't care about it. Like you don't care about how Google Cloud does it. And right now, I think there's a big debate about like liquidity fragmentation and like, hey, we have a million chains. Do a million chains all need to split the liquidity between each other? I don't think so. I think what we are seeing is you will have a small number of chains own most of the liquidity, and then the rest of the applications accessing the liquidity be on their own dedicated application-specific blockchain. And who are the best sort of, I think, people or organizations to become these sort of, I call them kind of like bank chains. It's a dumb name, really, but I think they are like the centralized exchanges and wallet providers that really have a lot of power here because they're like the entry point to the users, right? Users come to centralized exchange, users come to a wallet, and they can, and this is what you see with like Coinbase and Base, Uniswap with the Uniswap wallet, and all the other people that all have wallets. I predicted MetaMask chain like 2 years ago. I think it will still come. And they will all try to redirect the liquidity into their own chain and then just make it accessible to other chains that run application-specific wallets logic. Yeah, that's what I just said. Applications are built on app chains. Yeah, that's it. So if you're a builder, if you're interested in building your own Rollup, or if you're early on the journey and just want some feedback on what does it mean to actually launch a chain in production, feel free to talk to me. I will be around also on the weekend until Sunday. And yeah, I hope you learned a thing or two today. Thank you.